How are you planning your next 12 months? What are your priorities? And from a simple conversation of that, you get to learn about your customers and what you need to actually focus on because you know their priorities, for example, and you can help them fulfill some of them.
In this episode, we dive into the topic of customer insights and customer experience. To be successful in business, it is so important to really dive under the hood of everything your customers feel, think, say, and do as it relates to your brand. I'm delighted to have a fantastic guest to lead us through this discussion. Simone Wilson is an insights leader with over 20 years of experience working for global companies such as Nielsen, Ipsos, and HSBC Canada. Originally from Brazil, Simone moved to Canada more than 15 years ago. She currently lives in Toronto, where she works for Ipsos Canada as Vice President Customer Experience, consulting with local and global clients on CX research, voice of customer programs, and service design. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join us. Tell us who you are and where you're live from today.
Sure, yes. So I'm here in Toronto, Canada. So I'm an insights leader. I have over 20 years of experience. I work both on the client side and the supplier side of research, where I actually work now at Ipsos. I originally from Brazil, so if you hear an accent, that's where it's from.
Amazing. And Simone, I brought you on this show because I know how important it is to really dive under the hood of everything your customers think, feel, say, and do as it relates to your brand. And the terminology that we use in the customer experience world is that we capture customer insights. But for those who are listening, who are not in the customer experience world, will you please explain to them what are customer insights exactly?
Customer insights, or the other area to say that is marketing research, but I think it's essentially linking the customer or user to the business through information. So the key here is information. And I think in the current world, where changes are coming so fast, where there's so many versions of truth, reliable information is crucial for making confident decisions. And I think that has been something we've seen. This need has never been greater than before. I think, information that is reliable for decision making. So I believe that if you are doing customer insights, what you can get out of it is really better information for decision maker. Essentially, other elements, there are other key benefits as well, but I would say that is the one thing you wanted to keep in mind. You are decreasing your risk on business decisions. You're saving ultimately money or time when you can have that customer insights perspective.
So, what kind of things might you ask, or how do you go about getting this information?
As I said, customer insights, what is really, there are many types of insights. I guess you can think of financial insights, other things you read on the news, but customer insights is essentially human and human centric. So talking to customers, prospects, that is essential for you to conduct uh, a good project that takes into account the human centric side of it. So don't be afraid to reach out and in different ways to talk to the customer. And if I can say is that customer insights is also flexible. There are different ways you can do that. But I would say a few steps you wanted to think through when you are working and thinking of reaching out to customers to learn something is, first of all, take some moments to define well the problem you want to answer. So there could be different solutions for a problem. For example, if you are a small company trying to provide financial advice to people, um, they, there might be different ways to do that. You could define that as being, well, what is the best features of an app for financial advice? But that is defining probably the problem in a way that is too narrow. A better definition could be how might encourage good financial habits from people. And all of a sudden, you know, app could be a solution, but might not be, so defining the problem is the key element. Be clear about what you want at the end. What is that is important for you to move forward with your business decision. And I would say step two is really them thinking about an approach to solve the problem. And that included defining the right research design. And there could be different things that are needed. So you might need to think about how many people you need to talk to, what sort of specific business objectives you want. So if it's more about finding out the whys, you might go for a more qualitative research. If it's more about validating some information, you might go for a quantitative. And I would say step three and four would be to analyze the data once you collect and make sure you are sharing it if you have a team or if you have a group of people you want to influence, share that learning. So I would say those are kind of the steps you want to go through.
That's great, Simone, and really detailed. And there are a few points in there I'm going to come back on and ask you a little bit more about in a moment. Where I'd like to start with, before we dive in even deeper under the hood, and somebody who's listening today decides, I'm going to go and do some market research and get some customer insights, because actually I can really see now why I should do that. I'd like for them to really understand what the benefits are first before they dive in and do the work. So, can you summarize or explain maybe what the top two or three benefits are of getting customer insights and market research?
Yes. I think one great benefit, sorry, is that it helps you to adopt a customer-centric view when taking business. And customer is not only the people who currently buy your brand, but people who could become customers in the future. Prospects are your customers as well. So you want to communicate effective with them and meet their needs. So when you live in the area of customer such as the one we are living now, a lot of the value today is created through experience. And to understand that, you really need to take that human centric approach. So customer insights is the right tool for that, because you will understand human behavior in the context, the why, and even understand a little bit the broader issue, of humans as part of society. So I think a benefit number one is to help you adopt that customer centric view. um, as we talked before, decreasing the risk of business decisions. If you think when you're launching a new product or rebranding or trying to go into a new market, you might have different hypotheses about what the market wants, what you should be investing on, what you should communicate. But if you are what research does is to decrease unknowns. If you don't know for sure what it is, I think customer insights is the best thing that you can leverage to decrease the risk of making a decision. And ultimately, that saves money, saves time, and guarantee better success. And I think one thing that I think is customer insights is very important is that it's flexible, but it can guide you in different moments of your business growth. So if it is acquisition, if it is retention, if it's growth, if it's understanding why your sales are decreasing, that is a flexible tool to go to the market and get quick insights on what could be working well, what's not working well, what is the path for growth. So I think the flexibility that we have today, especially with technology allowing us to reach customers in an effective way, I think that's where you wanted to leverage insights.
Fantastic, Simone. I love that. So, Really, what just to recap that customer centricity, it drives customer centricity in everything you do is one of the key benefits, and it decreases the unknowns. So that can help you with saving time, saving money, and guaranteeing you better success. You've got a much better chance of success if you know what customers want, right?
Correct. And the current environment with so many technologies and solutions out there make it viable regardless of the size of your company. So that flexibility that exists today as well. And I think that is an important point.
I think so too, because businesses need to be agile. And we really saw that when the pandemic came out. And those who were empathic and listened to what their customers want were the ones that created loyalty in their business. Because I read a statistic back in 2021 and it said that businesses who were empathic during the pandemic, they were going to remain, clients were going to remain 70% more loyal to those businesses because the company showed empathy during hard times. So it's important that businesses listen to their customers and ask these questions, which leads me into how do you go about it? Let's say I'm a solopreneur, I have a VA, I get some help from time to time, but there's perhaps quite a few solopreneurs and small SMEs who are listening to the show. How can they gather insights and what kind of insights can they gather?
Sure. So there are many, many ways we can go about it, but if I can start by one basic definition is we usually think of research or the information in two big buckets. One is desk research or secondary research. So everything that is out there ready for you to leverage. So for example, the other day I read a McKinsey study saying that the number of weddings being booked in 2022 is like at a record levels. Well, if you are a financial planner and you are reading that information, maybe that can give you a clue about the importance of communicating new couples. How do you plan for finance together? Do you want to combine or not? So just getting that secondary data that is available out there is very useful just to get started, and we shouldn't neglect that, especially because you might be on a shorter budget and there's a lot of information out there. So places where you can go, like McKinsey's of the world, Ipsos, where I work, we provide tons of free information and solid information with good sample size, comparative across the globe. So you can do a lot just by looking at this research that is out there, and doing your desk research. And I would say the second area is primary research. So it's you going out there and collecting data. And when you're doing that, you want to think what's really your objective. So, for example, you might have observed some behavior on your website if you have one, and you want to understand the why. Well, if you wanted to understand the why, if you wanted to get more into the depth in the context of things, maybe a qualitative research is or approach is more uh, uh, adequate to go with. And qualitative is like usually defined by a smaller sample size. So you can do a focus group, you can do individual interviews, and you don't necessarily need to hire a big company to do that. If you know the questions and the objectives you want to meet, you can make sure you write a guide and then you invite participants. They could be in your customer base, they could be from social media, they could be people, influencers, or other experts that can give you some insight about markets and societies that you are interested in. So, even inviting someone for coffee and getting to know a little bit about the things you want for business decision can be actually very valid, and that's kind of in the realm of qualitative, where you actually get to know more in-depth things, but it's very, very good to get you started. And of course, you can go in the more quantitative where, your sample is bigger. Those type of research you wanted to do when you wanted to either validate a behavior or an attitude, or you wanted to be certain about something because it's important investment and you need to talk to more than five people. You wanted to actually get some measurement there. And there are different ways to do quantitative, from Google Forms to many technology companies now coming with do it yourself research methods, right? Ipsos has one now. It's very affordable. You don't even need subscription. SurveyMonkey, Easy Polls, Google Surveys, it's also very affordable, and you can reach plenty of data, robust samples with a small price. So keep in mind that there are alternatives there. It doesn't mean you need to spend big bucks to have good information back. You can find ways to be creative and get that information. The only thing I would say is that you do have to be prepared and think about the questions you want to ask, because that that is a crucial step.
Okay, and so let's say, I'm about to launch a new digital course and I'm going to go and do some research, and I want to do qualitative research where I'm going to do one on one calls with somebody. Can you give me an example of two or three questions that I absolutely should ask?
Yeah, so you should ask, what do they use now for learnings, right? Like, do not assume that anyone is doing online learning, but of course there is a growth, but do not assume that. What people are using, what are all the ways you are using to learn about things, and which ones are working well, which ones are not working well, what's the advantage of them, and how do you go about getting to choose something, choose the best way to learn. How do you take that decision? What are the triggers? What are the elements you consider? So when you're doing qual, you wanted to ask a lot about why, tell me about something, how. You wanted to have those questions that allow customers or participants to tell a story, to tell their story, what's behind their choice. And also, in qualitative, be prepared for meaningful pause. You really wanted to take the time to listen and to let that person express their feelings and thoughts, and probing with the whys, and tell me more about it. So that sort of technique helps a lot to get into the in-depth knowledge that you need.
Oh, that's fantastic. And actually it's reminding me of something I used to use quite a lot when I worked in the bank, which was a formula called TED. T for tell, E for explain, and D for describe. So tell me more about that. Explain that to me. Describe what you're doing right now. So those types of open-ended questions really help with getting the feedback that you're looking for. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also consider what else can you do to learn about the contexts, right? So sometimes choosing where to go, right, to do those interviews. Maybe if you have the ability to go to the person's house, and let's say what you're doing is this online learning, get to see what is the environment that person is doing the learning. Do they have a laptop? Do they have a place of their own? Do they have to get interrupted to take care of kids, or etc., etc.? That helps a lot to actually understand the context of the person, where things are happening, and that can give you ideas for innovation, for better serving your customers, etc. So I think that is important to keep in mind, to learn about the context, especially when you're doing the qual approach.
I love that. That's fantastic detail there, Simone. And I'd say so many people never think of doing that, but it's like it is possible. And so I know in the CX, in the customer experience world, we talk a huge amount about quantitative and qualitative data. But let's say again, so I'm about to launch my digital product. Should I have a minimum number of people to do quantitative research with?
Uh, yes, if you are spending a lot, yes, you should. But one thing we like to do more and more, and I think we've learned with the agile methodologies and service design, is to fail early, fail fast. So don't wait to develop the whole product and go test. Test early. Do you have a prototype in a piece of paper? Well, maybe that is enough for you to ask people about how would they like that, what features they would like to see in your website, etc., etc. So make sure you actually test more frequently and talk to people more frequently throughout the product development cycle. I think that is one of the, I think I would say, most important thing. So it is good to have quant at the end to validate if you can. I think that is absolutely important to, to support that. Okay, I'm right about that. And this has X percent, interest of purchase. So those metrics, they can be quite useful as well. But I would say it's more important how you go about doing that. uh, just don't do and at the end, do it throughout your entire process. And even if in the beginning it's just qual 5 6 people each time, it's okay. If you have that early assessment that allows you to understand, okay, yeah, that's good, that's not going to work, that this big idea that I have, that's not how users do it, etc., etc. If you have a lot of learnings throughout, you're much more successful at the end. And a quant at the end to validate is great, but you won't have like big surprise. Maybe you can have good validation, or you can still learn things, but it's not going to be a total, okay, I need to restart everything.
Fantastic. And so we kind of touched on there about launching a product. And I really like the advice that you gave about, as you're building it out and the features you're introducing to get feedback on that. That totally makes sense because I see very often that people create these products and services and offers that they think are amazing, but nobody actually wants them. And then when they don't sell, they're not sure why. So that totally makes sense. And I would always say to people as well, before you launch something, do your research and sell it and then build it, depending on the time frame. So let me ask you another question. So that's when you're launching and you're getting started. When else should people try to gather insights?
Yeah, you should really think of all the key moments, right, of the journey. So you need to understand the journey from the point of view of, getting to acquire your product, using your product, leaving or stopping using your product. So think of the big moments and stage of, interacting with your product or service. And in that journey, you can pretty much leverage insights to better understand any questions you might have. If it is acquisition, retention, so all of a sudden you see people leaving you, or not really increasing revenue or spend with you. What is the barrier there? What's Is there something else, or are they using another product, or what is happening? Are the needs changing? So retention, how satisfied they are, because you wanted to understand if they are satisfied, if you're meeting needs. Are you making it easy for them? Are you getting them to be loyal and start referring you? Some B2B referral can be quite important. So in that retention moment, you wanted to understand what percentage is, referring you, what percentage of customers are liking you or are putting a lot of effort to be with you. So that moment of using the product is quite important to have insights. And I would say, even when they leave you, you know collecting the information, why that happened. You wanted to uh, capture issues throughout your customer journey. So whenever you have, if you have a customer journey, whenever you have acquisition, retention, growth question, that's when insights, talking to customers, might be very productive in helping you move forward with your choice.
I recently came across a situation, Simone, where every time I used a service with a particular business, they would text me afterwards and say, "Thank you, dear. It was great seeing you here and it was lovely." And they had a little survey monkey in every single time I went back. And I kind of thought, oh, I filled it up the first time. I'm not going to fill it up again and again and again. And so for me, from a user experience, I found that really off putting. So I'd love to know, okay, so before, during, and after is kind of what we're saying here in terms of when to do it. But if the customer lifetime relationship is quite long, let's imagine it's a 10-year relationship and somebody comes back repeatedly, is there like a minimum time frame, that you should allow before you go back and ask the client to complete another survey for you or to have another conversation?
Yeah, I love that question because I do think we've been all inundated by survey because technology allows that, right? And all of a sudden you get to rate your experience pretty much for everything. But I would say one thing: when you launch a survey, think of a survey as just another touch point in the customer experience that you deliver. So, yes, you can't just put a survey that will annoy your customers. Same way you don't want it to annoy your customers with bad website or app. So, think of survey as just another touch point. I would say, to answer your questions, usually when we have different rules, but a common rule when we are talking about more this transactional type of study is an 180-day period. So if that person answered your survey on an app use, maybe you don't want it to touch them for another 3 months or another 6 months, depend on the size of your customer base. You can do 6 months, depend on your size of your customer base. If it's small, you need maybe a period of 3 months, but it's always good to think of a period where you kind of quarantine that person who answered the survey or that you invited, and not touch again on the same survey. So yeah, that's a good rule, like at least 90 days. It's one that I like to implement in general.
Yeah, fantastic. Because it could be something so small like that we just annoy customers with, and that could be a bugbearer that causes them to leave, right? So I love that. That's a good rule. So 90 days or 180 days, preferably. Okay, last question I have, Simone: budget. Okay, so I know you said at the start, if you're doing qualitative research and you can do it in focus groups or one to one and get that information. But let's imagine some business owners, they have zero budget or a very small budget to do some of this qualitative research. What could they do if they had a little bit of a budget?
Yeah, if they don't have much, and they should consider, am I well equipped to do it on my own? If you think you have a good hang on, asking questions, like formulating your questions, because you don't want to do it in a totally biased way, or if you think you don't have any framework, maybe go a little bit, you know understand first how to ask questions. But let's say you have no budget and you wanted to do on your own, there's plenty of way to reach out to customers. You might have a customer base, so just give them a call. In B2B, to reach out and give another company a call, you will learn a lot if you are talking to the right person, decision maker, or the main user of your product. You can learn just a lot by asking a few questions: how we are doing, what we could improve, how are you planning your next 12 months, what are your main priorities. And from a simple conversation of that, you get to learn about your customers and what you need to actually focus on, because you know their priorities, for example, and you can help them fulfill some of them. So I would say that Qual, it's actually quite flexible in the way that a low budget or no budget will allow you to still do a few good interviews and just get good insights. A quantitative is obviously depends on how you can reach an audience, but if you have a customer base, some simple things like Google Forms that are actually free, you can do data collection if you have the customer base. If you don't have the customer base, or if you wanted to reach a big audience, that's when you will have to make use of panels of companies that have access to panels, right? So that could be something as Google survey, or Ipsos as well. Ipsos does now. We have a digital thing. It's totally do it yourself. It's totally guided, and you don't have to pay a subscription. You can do a one thing, be done, and it's super, super good access to good panel, good sample. Uh, Survey Monkey, other things will require subscription, but it could be a free version that you find that you can use. Usually they have a free version. It's just a bit more limit, maybe in terms of the questions you can ask, but even though it's still free, you can go there, you can invest your time and launch yourself something. So this is pretty good moment to do things on low budget because there's now technology for you to leverage.
That's great. And I think my takeaway for people is there's so much happening in the world right now. If you haven't done market research or gathered customer insights, now is a good time to start. Would you agree?
Yes, I would say that now more than ever. I've never seen a greater need for insights from big companies to small companies than the current times. And it's because of the complexity of markets. It's because all the chains where customer now really empowered to make choice. So if you are thinking of differentiating just in product or service, it's probably not going to be enough. You also have to think of how you differentiate on the experience, and that's where you need good, reliable information.
Simone, thank you so much. What an information packed show we've had, folks. Simone, I'm just going to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to add or to for the listeners? Is there anything else before we wrap up?
I would say be brave. Your first project, maybe if you are doing on your own, won't be perfect, but just keep going. Human to human conversation is rich. It can be a tremendous learning and a tremendous opportunity for business success.
Fantastic. Simone, thank you again for joining the Master Your Business show. I will share in the links below where people can connect with you online should they wish to ask you any further questions or get in touch afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was really, really great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Simone.